Hey, welcome to Tank Talk. I'm your host, Bob Tankard, and today's guest is candidate running for District 9 Congressman Dan Sullivan. Dan, welcome. They call you the Nurse Sullivan, the nurse, as running for Congress.
First of all,
welcome.
Thanks very much for the invite, Tank.
Right.
I'm campaigning as Nurse Dan, and just for your audience, nurse is not my first name. It's my job.
That's right.
There are a lot of literal people out there that think, wow, that's an unusual first name. But no, my name is Dan Sullivan.
Right.
I work as a nurse, and I'm campaigning as Nurse Dan.
Dan, tell us a little bit about Dan.
Sure.
You had mentioned just before we came on that this is about the first time you've been to the vineyard in 10 years. So you haven't been here in quite a while.
Yeah, I have not. I have been occupied with work, and I just never found the time to come out here. It's always great to come out here. I love the island.
But you're on the Cape anyway, right?
I live in Plymouth, so I'm a stone's throw from the canal.
Away, yeah.
I'll be candid. I actually enjoy the Outer Cape. I enjoy the beaches of the Outer Cape. I enjoy the dining.
Right.
And as you know, in the summertime, it's very congested.
Very
on the
hectic.
island. So
on the Cape.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
South of the canal, it's
Right,
very congested. And so I actually enjoy the Outer Cape and the islands after Labor Day and before July 4th.
You're like my wife. My wife's the same. She starts pulling her hair out probably Memorial Day and stops pulling it out probably after Columbus Day. But other than that, she's pulling it out because it's so congested, and she doesn't like that. You know. Plus your house, my house has been full since June 1 with people. And my wife and I saw each other the other day and said, hi, how you doing? Haven't seen you in a while.
I hear you.
But listen, tell me about, you want to go from a nurse, which is a very, very important job in our country today and around the world. We don't seem to have enough of them to provide, to Congress. That's a totally broad step. What made you want to make this change?
Well, first of all, I never want to give up nursing.
Okay.
Prior to becoming a nurse, I was in business sales for 20 years.
Okay.
I worked for Fortune 500 companies right down to startups, selling business to business. I was also in business development. And during the Great Recession, during the Obama presidency, I decided I wanted to do something more meaningful. And so I took my education as an undergraduate, and I went to nursing school nights and weekends for 4 years, and I earned my nursing degrees and my nursing license. So I never want to give up nursing. I went into nursing for one single reason. I enjoy helping people, okay, especially people that are in need. And what I find is people that are in the hospital, it's probably one of the most vulnerable times for them in their lives.
It is.
And so I enjoy that work. So I never want to give that up. Why did I decide to be a candidate for office? It's real simple. I'm not happy with the state of affairs in our country. And I thought there's two things you can do. One, you can bellyache, or two, you can get off the bench and get on the ballot. So I decided to get on the ballot and see if I can go out and advocate for the working, the middle class, and our senior citizens, who I believe have been increasingly left out of what's left of the American dream. And so that's why I decided to run.
Okay, but one of the things you're saying how to change. How would you go about when we're talking about, because everybody talks about our seniors, everybody talks about the middle class, everybody talks about the lower class. They want to help them. But it seems as though that when they get into those positions, we're still the ones that are left out, okay? How would you go about making some of those changes? Because when people are saying, I'm going to vote for you because you said you're going to make some changes, how would you go about changes? You're fighting an establishment. You're fighting against people that have hooks into other people. The lobbyists or hooks.
Special interest.
Special interest groups got the hooks into the people. And the hooks are usually money. I need money to run. So if I give you money, I want you to start doing what I say. How do you go about making some of the changes without getting involved?
Well, I think one of the big things, and it's not an easy task, is I'm a firm believer in term limits. I'm also a firm believer
Right,
in
that's good, that's good.
mandatory retirement age. You know, in this state, we have mandatory retirement ages for our judges and also our state troopers.
Right.
And nobody says a peep about it. At the federal level, we have mandatory retirement ages for our airline pilots as well as our air traffic controllers. Again, nobody says a peep about it. So I believe that there is precedent for both term limits and mandatory retirement age. The current sitting congressman, Mr. Keaton, has been in this office for 10 years, and if he's reelected, by the end of that term, it'll be 12 years. But he's been in public office since 1977. I was born in '66. He's been in office almost as long as I've been alive. And based on public records, when you look at his pensions that he draws from his state work and couple it with his income as a U.S. congressman, he makes over $400,000 a year, which according to the IRS puts him in the top 1% income bracket in the country. I think there's something wrong with that. I think that our politicians, our elected officials, should not be in the top 1% income earners in the country. So how do we get about it? We got to really push hard for term limits and mandatory retirement ages for all elected officials.
Okay, let me ask you a question because this is important. What I liked about John McCain and even Ted Kennedy was that the ability for them to work across the aisle. And I think that as a country, when we look at people, we know that people, we have Republicans, Democrats, Independents, and then those people that don't even care. They're not even registered any party. But to be able to converse with those people and to try to make things happen for people, how willingly are you willing to, to work across the aisle with your counterpart?
Okay, so first of all, I have great faith in the common sense and level-headedness of the average American. I mentioned that in my prior career I worked in sales. I was a commission sales guy. What that means is if I sold, I made an income. If I didn't sell, guess what? I only had lint in my pockets. I learned that 50% of something is better than 100% of nothing.
Exactly.
Okay? What we have today in our current ruling class, whether it's at a federal level or state level, is this mentality of winner take all. It's either if I win, you have to lose. If you win, then I lose. That's called zero sum. That is a terrible mentality. And you know what it gets us? Nowhere. The rich do get richer, but the rest of us get poorer. So I think I'm going to take it one other step. So when I was going out to solicit signatures for my nomination papers to get on the ballot, I was an army of one. It was just me.
Right.
I obtained 4,500 signatures from all across the district except for the islands.
Okay.
And I had probably 20,000 encounters from people that identified as conservative, liberal, Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, or apolitical.
Right.
And this is what I found, that on the big issues, people have more in common than you think.
Oh, sure they do.
What we have in our politics and also in our society is we have a very loud group on the left. We have a very loud group on the right. They have big platforms, big megaphones, and they drown everybody else out. So I actually believe, but I believe that they're small. I don't know what that percentage is. I don't know if it's 5%, 10%, 20%. But I think on either side, they're actually small in numbers. I think the vast majority of the people in this country have common ground on the big issues. What are the big issues? The economy, right? What we want out of our public education, what we want out of our public health, what we want our environment to look like. So all of those big issues, I think we all generally agree on what's the problem and generally agree on the strategy to go about it. Now, there might be a lot of differences about the tactics you take. So I'm an optimist. I really believe in the common sense and I believe in the wisdom of the average level-headed American.
Let me ask you a question. You know, we look at the Cape and we look at the islands, and you see both of the places being sort of not overrun, but the populations of the Cape and the islands has increased over the last 30 years. You know, when I came to the island in 1961, at the age of 15, there was 4,200 people, 4,800 people that lived on the vineyard year-round. Well, it's probably 22,000 to 26,000 year-round residents now. What changes? Now, I know on the vineyard right now, our biggest issue is housing. Housing for people that want to live here, so affordable housing. Affordable. $1 million is not affordable to me, okay?
Nor me.
And nor is some of the houses that are being sold for $1 million. If I had hit the lottery for $300 million, I wouldn't buy them because that doesn't make sense. Right. When you come to the vineyard, you're buying a piece of land to build whatever house you want to put on it. So housing for affordable people plus workforce housing. Now, I'm assuming that the Cape is running into the same problem. You know, at least in the affordable housing for people that want to stay on the Cape, and workforce housing for those people that want to work here in the summertime. The businesses that close in the winter, open in the summer, and they don't have a space or housing to house those individuals that are coming here. How would you deal with that particular situation as a congressman?
Well, first of all, affordable housing is a problem if you live east of Springfield, Mass. I mean, it is from the New Hampshire border right down the Provincetown, and from the Boston Harbor all the way out to the outskirts of Springfield. I think there's a couple of things. Well, obviously, we have a supply problem, and we also have a trend that I really find to be disturbing, and that is you're seeing a lot of private equity and a lot of private investors like Jeff Bezos of Amazon and Bill Gates going in and buying up residential marketplaces. In fact, I was reading down in Houston, a private investor went into the city of Houston and bought 2,500 homes, okay? So you're seeing these investors are coming in. They're no longer invested in commercial property. They're investing not even apartment complexes. They're investing in individual single family, or maybe it's a multi-family residential property. So supply is being gobbled up by corporate investors.
For what reason? Well, why would they be good? Would it be that they're buying something for $150,000? Knowing that it'll be a shortage, and then turn around selling it for $250,000, $300,000? Is that what the game is?
No, in many cases, they're actually not selling it. They're renting the property. They're renting it. The second thing is Chinese money. Chinese, particularly Chinese, and secondarily Russia. Their wealthy class is coming in and they're buying up our residential real estate market. So I would look to, I'm a big believer in, just as in, you know, with our democracy, I'm a big believer in you know, one man, one vote.
Right, exactly.
I'm a big believer in this as well. If it's a single or a multi-family home, I want it to be owner occupied. So I think that there are ways through legislation that you can legislate away a lot of this foreign investment that's coming in, and it's coming in Greater Boston. There's a city, Quincy, Mass, just south. Chinese money is all over the city, and they're Chinese nationals. They're not living here. They have extended family that lives here. The money is flowing from China through their family. You know what they're doing, Tank? They're making cash offers way above asking price. They're just blowing the competition out of the market. So families that want to, you know, want to start a family.
They're doing here the same thing. It's, you know, it's no competition. They're bidding on the house.
Right. So you and I, we're going to go to the bank and we're going to ask a bank to borrow money in the form of a mortgage. They're coming in with cash and they're making a cash offer above asking price. It's not fair.
No.
I think the third team too is we have to recognize that we have to get a handle on our immigration. We can't have open borders and then talk about the affordability of housing, because every immigrant that comes into this country, whether they come in legally or otherwise, they have to be housed somewhere.
Right.
So you see what's happening now with the illegal migrants that are being shipped into New York City. Just as of yesterday, they've had to take over 6 hotels in downtown New York City just to accommodate them. So I think, you know, so I think if we get a handle on our immigration policy, so that we have legal immigration that is sustainable,
Right.
okay, and we take foreign investment out of the residential marketplace. So we whatever we have to do to curtail Chinese and Russian, those are the principal investors in our residential marketplace. And then also, in the case of private equity and the billionaires like Bezos and Bill Gates, we impose tax disincentives for them to do it. If they want to invest in Martha's Vineyard TV, knock your socks off. But if they want to buy your neighbor's house and your brother's house, then you know what? Let's put into the tax code disincentives that does not make it attractive for them to make that buy.
Okay, going back to, you're talking about taxing the wealthy. We all know that the wealthy, the 1%, never gets taxed what they should get taxed, okay? We know that. How would you go about making that happen so that the people see it? And the other thing is, you know, the other question is the lobbyists. Where would you put lobbyists in the place in politics? Because they're there. You know, I was reading an article that not too long ago that they say when a person runs for Congress or the Senate, whatever it is, for the first time, the first 2 years, they're golden. They're not touched, they're not influenced by them. But when it comes for them to start running for the second term, then the lobbyists come in and the money starts flowing, because that's what they need to make the next step, to get to the next level. How would you handle that? How would you handle lobbyists? And then how would you handle the other question, which the big question is the electoral college situation? Should we get rid of that as a country and say, you just said something, one man, one vote across the country. We vote statewide for our governor. No town has any change. The governor doesn't have to win Springfield in order to get in. He has to win the population of all. How do we do that? First of all, the taxes.
Well, I'm going to circle back. You
Okay.
said, what do we do about the lobbyists? I think we put the lobbyists, and I think we put them with the lawyers, okay, and we buy them a one-way ticket and we send them overseas.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
I'm being facetious,
Okay.
but that's the first thing. But you know, with the recent Inflation Reduction Act, you know that Joe Biden and the congressional Democrats are calling for the hiring of 87,000 IRS agents, ostensibly to go after tax cheats that make $400,000 or more. That's their stated goal, which I think is spot on. But when you read the details, the one area that they're not going to pursue are personal, private charities. And I believe that the greatest source of tax cheats in this country are the wealthy that create their own personal private charities. So whether it's,
So they're hiding money in their charities. Yeah.
well, just look at it.
Yeah.
I mean, Tank, look at this. The Clintons have their own foundation, okay? Bill and Melinda Gates have their own foundation, right? Foundations, the nonprofits. Michael Bloomberg does. Jeff Bezos does. The Koch brothers does. Tom Brady and Gisele Bündchen have their own taxes and their own personal private charities. Our former president, Obama, has his own personal private charity. In fact, even my primary opponent has his own personal private charity. And I believe that these personal private charities are being used, not exclusively, but I think that a number of them are being used as tax shelters, as personal piggy banks, and as slush funds. In fact, if you look at all of the high-profile people, the elitists in our country, if you look at their wealth before they created their personal private charity, and you look at their wealth after they created it, it goes up exponentially. Okay, I am not an economist. I am not a financier. I do have common sense, and I say, why are all of these people's wealth going up after they created the personal private charity as opposed to pre-personal? So I would take those 87,000 IRS agents and I would turn them around and I would go through all of the personal private charities in this country. Here's an interesting fact, Tank. When Mr. Obama became president in 2008, there were approximately 1.2 million charities in this country. As of 2020, per the IRS, it's 2.2 million. So it's almost doubled in the last 12 years, the number of personal private charities.
Now you look at those charities, and you see that they actually run through just about every professional organization, because how many athletes have these same things?
Tom Brady.
On? You know what I mean? Well, not only Tom Brady, but anybody that's making over $10 million a year has found a way to funnel money into a charity for whatever reason, and to either hide it or do whatever they need to do. But it's like every major athlete or entertainer or anybody, the door's been open for them to do that. And I agree that I think that that should be examined to find out ways to cut that back and say, no, if you want a charity, that's one thing, but you're not going to use it as a slush fund, or you're not going to put money in there to hide it or anything else. I agree. I can agree with that.
So you mentioned something off air. You mentioned that you listen to Christian TV, so I presume that you're a Christian.
Right.
I'm a Catholic, but I do tithe. Okay. I don't create a personal private charity to tithe through that.
No.
I just give
right off the top.
Exactly.
Right off the
after
top.
tax.
That's right.
After tax. So I just look at the proliferation of personal private charities, and it just.
But that's something that you would have to do across the aisle. You know what I mean? Whether you're a Democrat or Republican or independent or whatever, you'd have to hit everybody, because I think every person in a party is probably doing some of that to get away.
That's what I said.
So you might find, if you're a Democrat, you might find some enemies in that situation, a Republican or a liberal or conservative, because you'll be hitting their pockets.
Amen to it. Amen to it.
Yeah.
Because I think our politics is way too partisan, and our politicians a lot of them are into what I call the politics of personality. They're all about self-promotion.
Well, one thing, it's like Dan, it's like I read an article 2-3 months ago where 400 of the top companies in our country didn't pay taxes. Now, how could that be? You know what I mean? How could that possibly be, and you're still functioning as a viable company? How could that be? How come you not pay taxes and still operate? And so that means that UMWA is paying your taxes.
Exactly. Do you remember when George Bush was president, he came up with this term called fuzzy math? I believe that a lot of these corporations, like Amazon, their tax return from 2021, they paid zero in tax.
That's right.
So
how could that be?
How could it be? The IRS code is so deliberately complex and complicated that only the wealthy that can afford the best certified public accountants can manipulate the tax code. So I want to see the tax code be simplified to such a great extent that pretty much the only thing you need to do to fill your taxes is to take that standard deduction.
Yeah,
okay.
Well, that should be. My son was here not too long ago, and he says, Poppy, one tax for everybody. If everybody says 15% of your income goes to taxes, then 15% of everybody across the board pays the tax. And that's something that could happen, but that will never happen, because we know that the top wealthy people don't pay 15%.
Right, and you know why? You just used the word income. Right. So what you and I and most of your listeners out there define as income, which is usually in the form of a W-2, a paycheck.
Right.
The wealthy don't draw a typical paycheck.
That's right.
So they're paid, their compensation is much more sophisticated.
Right.
And so what happens is it's how you treat their compensation, which then determines what their tax liability is. So again, it goes back to the fact that if we simplify the tax code, and again, I am not I am not an accountant.
Right,
I'm not a CPA.
right, right.
Although in my past professional life, I did sell software to CPAs. And I learned this about CPAs. They are some of the brightest people in our workforce. They're
That's right.
very bright.
That's right.
But again, with genius, it can go one or two ways. You can use that genius for good. You could also use that genius for bad.
We got about 1 minute and 30 seconds.
Okay.
Tell the people on Martha's Vineyard, looking in that camera, why they should vote for Dan Sullivan.
Sure. Well, I'm a common sense conservative. As a nurse, I love to advocate for people, and I believe that the working, the middle class, and our senior citizens have been shortchanged by our elected officials way too long, and I'd like to go to Congress and advocate for all people that want to see a better slice of the American dream.
Well, Dan, I wish you well. I wish you the best. And maybe someday you might come down here and be a congressman here as part of District 9. I want to wish you well.
Tank, thanks for inviting me on.
Thank you for coming on.
I appreciate it.
And thank you for tuning in to Tank Talk. Until next time, this is your host, Bob Tankard, saying good evening.